There are several different types of interest formulas. The first one we're going to look at is what's called simple interest. Simple interest is kind of like the forefather of all the interest formulas. It just takes an amount and applies interest to the life of the cycle. So like if you invest $1,000 for 5 years, it's going to calculate how much interest should be added on for that whole 5-year period. So the formula for simple interest is I for interest equal P for principal times R, which is your rate, times T, which is time. I remember it as I per T. So I stands for interest. P is your principal. That's what you invest or borrow. T is your time. It's always expressed in years. And R is your rate in its decimal form. So for instance, let's suppose you borrow $10,000 at 4% simple interest. For 5 years. How much interest do you end up paying? So the interest, I, equal principal times rate times time. So that's 10,000 times 0.04 multiplied by 5. Which, if we use our calculator, is 10,000 times 0.04 times 5, which gives us $2,000. So we pay a total of $2,000 in interest. So the total amount that we end up paying is our principal plus our interest. So 10,000 plus 2,000, which is equal to $12,000. Alright, so let's take another example. Suppose you invest $2,000 at a 2.5% simple interest rate for 30 weeks. How much do you have in your balance? So I per T. So interest is equal to 2,000 times your rate, 0.025, times your time, which is 30 weeks. Now in years, that would be 30 over 52. Okay, so we type this into our calculator. We have 2,000 times 0.025 times 30 over 52, which gives us $28.85. It's money, so we got to round appropriately. So our total, we have to add that back to the principal, gives me $2,000 plus my $28.85 which is $2,028.85. Simple interest is very easy to work with. Now, there's another type of interest which we call compound interest. Compound interest takes different amounts of time and applies interest onto the principal, so that the new interest gained takes into account the interest already applied and the principal. There is a formula that they've come up with that calculates it all, and it is your total equal your principal times 1 plus r over n raised to the nt. Now the variables in this equation mean the same thing, except we have a new variable, n. N represents the number of compounding periods in 1 year. Okay? So suppose we borrow $20,000 for 5 years, and it's for 5 years at a 9.5% rate compounded monthly. Can't spell today. So if I go through this, my principal is $20,000. My rate is 0.095. My time is 5 years, and n is 12. Since I'm compounding monthly, n is equal to 12 because there's 12 months in 1 year. So I substitute my information into the formula. That gives me 20,000 times 1 plus r, which is 0.095, divided by 12, raised to the nt. That would be 12 times 5. Now let me go get my other calculator. Alright, it's loading for a second. So I have 20,000 times 1 plus 0.095 divided by 12 raised to the 12 times 5. Which gives me 32,119 cents. 32,119 cents. Now, one thing to note on this formula is that it gives you your total amount. So if you need your interest, you're going to have to subtract your principal from this. So this is the total amount that I pay. That is my total. Now, if I want to figure out just how much interest that I've had to pay in, I need to subtract off my principal, which gives me $12,100.19. So that's how much interest has been paid. Alright. We'll do one more example of that. So let's suppose we invest $10,000 at 4% compounded semi-annually for 10 years. Okay, so again, my principal is $10,000. My rate is 0.04. My time is 10, and my N, semi-annually means twice a year, so N would be 2. So that's T equal P times 1 plus R over N raised to the NT. That's 10,000 times 1 plus R, 0.04, over N, which is 2, raised to the NT. That would be 2 times 10 to this N. 10,000 times 1 plus 0.04 divided by 2 raised to the 2 times 10. Gives me $14,859. $14,859 and 37 cents. Now, the last type of interest that we're going to look at is called continuous interest. Continuous interest compounds the principal infinitely many times through the life of the balance. And the formula for that is your total equal P times E raised to the RT. Now remember, this formula compounds the principal infinitely many times throughout the life of the balance. So if we take and suppose we invest $25,000 for 25 years, compounded continuously. At a 2.3% rate. My principal is $25,000. My rate is 0.023. Time is 25, and N, it's compounded continuously, so that's T equal 20, or let me write my formula first. P times E raised to the RT. That is 25,000 times E raised to the 0.023 times 25. 25,000 times E, you can hit second divide to get E, raised to the, what was my rate again? 0.023 times 25. gives me 44,428. $44,428.26. Okay.